Matt Eberflus fired by the Bears after a major mishap at the end of the Thanksgiving Day loss to the Lions. What does that mean for Caleb Williams and his future? That is our top story tonight. We've also got all the injuries and trends you need to know before setting your Week 13 lineups. Let's get ready for Week 13 together tonight on Breaking Fantasy Football. Welcome into Breaking Fantasy Football. I'm Alex Johnson. This is Yards Per Fantasy. And like I said, our top story tonight is Matt Eberflus out as the Bears head coach. It's a long time coming. A long time coming. This is the first time the Bears have ever fired a head coach during a season. And it's well-deserved. Well-deserved. The handling of the last 30 seconds or so of that Lions game by Matt Eberflus was absolute malpractice. I mean, he tried to rationalize it. He really did. He tried his absolute best. But I gotta tell you, man, I mean, I get what he was saying. So what his explanation was, what they wanted to do after Caleb Williams took a sack, there was about 33 seconds left. Clock was running. What they wanted to do was hold on to that timeout, run another play, try to get 8 to 10 yards or so, even less maybe, to get into field goal range and kick the field goal. That's what they wanted to do. And then use that timeout. They wanted to pick up that 7-8 yards, use the timeout, and then kick the field goal. That made sense. I get that. I really do. I get that. Maybe it wasn't the best situation to do that, coming off a sack, with receivers running down the field, got a rookie quarterback. Probably not the best idea to not take the time out there. But I get how that thinking works. I'm okay with that. I'll forgive that. What happens when the clock gets under 20 seconds, it gets under 18 seconds, it gets under 15 seconds, now it's 10 seconds, and the offense clearly is still not ready to snap the ball? You got to use the timeout. I know Caleb Williams deserves a little bit of the blame for this. He does. He should have been more aware of the situation, of the clock, knowing the timeout situation. He should have known all that. But he's a rookie quarterback. We get it. But the coach is the firewall to those mistakes happening from the quarterback. The quarterback, there's so much happening on the field, coming off a sack in that situation for a rookie. There's so much happening. Yes, I get it. He needs to, have some clarity and be the guy to either call a timeout if they're not ready, or get the offense ready for the next play much faster than he did. I get that. But the head coach needs to be the firewall when he sees, all right, this isn't really going that well. We got to call a timeout. He's got to step in there and call the timeout. And Matt Eberflus didn't. Absolute malpractice, absolute incompetent game management, clock management at the end of that game. He deserved to be fired. It was already heading in that direction. I think the Bears wanted to wait until the end of the season. It was pretty obvious he was getting the axe. He knew that. Everyone knew that. The team severely underperformed. He had lost the locker room. The players made that pretty clear. You could just tell that from just a few comments from DJ Moore, that the team had lost, or that Eberflus had lost the locker room. It was heading towards that direction, but this was the situation that the Bears were like, you know what? We don't normally fire head coaches during the season, but we can't accept this. We can't accept this. Let's just do it now, end the misery, and start looking for our next guy. because that's the way we were heading anyway. Now, it wasn't just the season. It wasn't just that game. It was also, you also got to factor in the hiring of Shane Waldron. That was a really bad move by Matt Eberflus. That is one of the factors that got him fired, or was going to get him fired if this hadn't happened. Now, Thomas Brown does step in, takes over as the interim head coach. This is a lot for Thomas Brown. Thomas Brown has gone from the quarterback's coach with zero play calling responsibilities, he's just working with Caleb Williams, he's working with the quarterbacks. And then all of a sudden he's the offensive coordinator. Now he's calling plays. And then 2 weeks later, now he's the fucking head coach. He's got to manage the entire team. I'm not sure he was really the right guy to choose for that because of that. Because not only is he the offensive coordinator, but he's also the interim offensive coordinator. He's the new offensive coordinator. So he's the interim offensive coordinator and the interim head coach. Probably wasn't the best choice, but I can't really think of who else is on that coaching staff. So I don't really know who else would have been a good candidate for that. But I don't know. I don't know what the Bears are doing. It's a mess. Now, I just want to throw out a few names. We're not going to go into the analysis of it. Just a few names, Bears head coaching candidates. I'm hoping that you'll throw your head coaching candidates into the chat. Let us know who you would like to see the Bears hire as the head coach in the offseason. The obvious name is Ben Johnson. Everyone wants Ben Johnson. As a Patriots fan, I was really hoping that they were going to hire Ben Johnson last year. They didn't even fucking interview anyone but Gerard Mayo, so that pissed me off. But Ben Johnson's a great candidate for any team. He's going to get a head coaching job this offseason. He's going to have his pick of head coaching jobs, which I think is what he wanted. And this is a really great situation for him. Come in, work with Caleb Williams, the number 1 overall pick. He's shown flashes. Come in and work with that guy. Bears could be really, really good next year if Ben Johnson can come in, bring his offense from the Lions to the Bears. They're going to do really well. But he's going to cost a lot of money. I don't know if the Bears are willing to pay for that. I really don't. I'm really skeptical if the Bears are willing to pay up for head coach. I'm really not sure. So some other head coaching candidates, Liam Cohen from Slowick. He's not going to be quite as hot of a candidate as he was last year. He's the Texans offensive coordinator. The Texans were so great last year. CJ Stroud coming in his rookie year. They haven't been quite the same this year, but I still think he's going to get some head coaching, at least some interviews. Kevin Stefanski, if he gets fired from the Browns, he'd be a really nice option, I think. He's got a good offensive system there. I think he could work really well with Caleb Williams. His system clearly didn't work with Deshaun Watson, and maybe that's partly on him for not adjusting his system to Deshaun Watson, but we'll see. We'll see. I think he'd be a decent candidate, as with Joe Brady. You also got Wes Phillips, who's the Vikings offensive coordinator. He's got that, that Sean McVay, Shanahan style background, that offensive system that everybody is looking for in the NFL right now, that's working so well in the NFL right now. Maybe they go to Wes Phillips. Kellen Moore, Brian Daboll, if he gets the axe from the Giants, I think he'd be a really nice candidate to come in and work with Caleb Williams. And then you got Aaron Glenn, possibly. Now, the thing with Aaron Glenn, he's a defensive guy. He would have to bring in a strong offensive coordinator. I'm not sure who that would be, but he'd have to bring in a strong offensive coordinator in order to make that work. I think everybody else I mentioned are all offensive coordinators or offensive-minded head coaches. But let me know. Let me know in the comments who you think would be the best candidate and maybe a realistic candidate, or maybe your wish for a Bears head coach in 2025. And while you're there, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let's move on. Let's get to the injuries for Week 13. We got a lot of injuries. Not as much as we've seen in weeks past, though. Not as much as we've seen in weeks past. We got a pretty good list in the clear to play, like Drake London, Amari Cooper's clear to play. Bo Nix has been dealing with a back injury, but he's good to go, as does Michael Pittman. We're going to get Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson It was really iffy at the beginning of the week whether or not we were going to get Brian Robinson, but he's off the injury report. He's clear to play. He's going to play in this game, which is really exciting, especially with Austin Eckler going to be out. But we saw the ankle injury happen last week for Brian Robinson during the game. Left for a little bit. It looked like it was going to be pretty bad. It really did. It looked bad. He came back into the game, and he's going to be good to go. He's going to play in week 13. Also expected to play, but aren't fully in the clear yet, but they're heading towards, they're on the right side of questionable. They are expected to play. That includes Jerry Jeudy with a knee injury, Josh Reynolds with a hand injury. He was also shot in the head like a month and a half ago. You guys hear about that? Josh Reynolds shot. How many guys have been shot this year? We had Tank Dell shot. We had Ricky Pearsall shot. We had Josh Reynolds shot. What's going on? Alec Pierce, he's expected to play. We got that Adam Schefter tweet about an hour or two ago. Coming in with a foot injury, he's expected to play. Trevor Lawrence is expected to be back. He's questionable. He's not going to be 100%, but he is going to play in this game, which is huge because that offense, Trevor Lawrence is not the savior. He's not, he's no Patrick Mahomes out there, but he's hell of a lot more competent than Mac Jones. So it'd be good to get Trevor Lawrence for our Evan Ingram shares, our Brian Thomas shares. So it'd be good to have Trevor Lawrence back. Demario Douglas is expected to play with his ankle injury. Jamal Williams. Breece Hall popped up on the injury report early this week with a knee injury. He was a little iffy. He was a little muddy there for a couple of days early in the week, but Jeff Ulbrich has made it pretty clear that he expects Breece Hall to play. If for some reason he doesn't, make sure you are picking up, stashing, and probably starting Braylon Allen. Should be anyway. You should be stashing him anyway. Brock Purdy is expected to be back. I'm still skeptical. I'm still skeptical on the Brock Purdy shoulder injury. Sounds like he's going to play. He's expected to play. Every indication is he's going to play, but that shoulder injury is scaring me. It's really scaring me. I think there's a risk that if things don't go well for him on Sunday Night Football with that shoulder, we could see Brock Purdy shut down for the year. I'm nervous about that. And Tajay Spears expected to return from his concussion. Up in the air, these are the true game time decision guys. We just got two guys. Keon Coleman coming off that wrist injury. He's already missed a couple weeks, and they're coming off the bye week. So this is a pretty serious injury for Keon Coleman if he's still not good to go coming off the bye. And then Devonta Smith with a hamstring injury. He missed last week. It would be really fun to get him out there this week against the Ravens. That offense going against that susceptible Ravens secondary would be a lot of fun. That's going to be a fun game either way. That's going to be your fantasy points party of the weekend. Get ready for some fantasy points. Ravens, Eagles. Hopefully we'll have Devonta Smith out there, but he is up in the air at this point. Out this week are Dalton Kincaid with a knee injury, Jalen Coker with a quad injury, Jatavian Sanders had that scary neck injury last week. Did you see him land on his head? Like the crown of his head, he landed. That was terrifying. Good to see that he's okay. He's going to be out for week 13. As is Josh Downs with a shoulder injury. J.K. Dobbins has an MCL sprain in his knee. He's going on IR. He should be back for the real-life playoffs, but as far as fantasy football goes, we might not get J.K. Dobbins again for the rest of the year, which is unfortunate. Austin Eckler, same thing, going on IR with his second concussion of the year. This one looked pretty bad. Looked pretty bad the other day, last weekend. So hopefully Austin Eckler will have a good recovery. And then Cedric Tillman is also out for the Browns for Monday Night Football. He's got a concussion as well, but he is going to miss week 13. Let's move on to the trends to know for week 13. I got 5 trends you need to know heading into week 13. The first one is we talked about it last week. I was curious to see how Jonathan Brooks would be incorporated into the Panthers backfield, making his NFL debut in week 12. It went pretty much exactly how we projected it would. Actually, it was even worse. It was even worse than we projected it would. But we talked about Jonathan Brooks as just the backup running back to Chuba Hubbard, and that was very, very clear in his first game. Chuba Hubbard played 88.7% of the snaps. Jonathan Brooks is 8.1%. And the touch distribution was Hubbard had 16 carries and 5 targets. Jonathan Brooks had 2 carries, 0 targets. Aren't you so happy you used an 8th round pick on Jonathan Brooks this year? Aren't you so happy? I told you not to. I hope you listened. Obviously, I do expect this role will expand slightly over the next couple of weeks as they ease Jonathan Brooks into the offense, coming off the knee injury. He'll get more than 8% of the snaps and 2 touches. But it's probably capped at about 25% of the snaps and 8 touches, 10 touches. He's just going to be Miles Sanders. He's going to work into the Miles Sanders role. Maybe he gets a little bit more than what Miles Sanders was getting, but unless something happens to Chuba Hubbard, Jonathan Brooks is not usable. He's not going to be usable this year. We're waiting for 2025. And even then, Chuba Hubbard got that nice extension, so we'll see what happens with Jonathan Brooks in 2025. But as we did talk about last week, I do think you still should be stashing Jonathan Brooks on your bench if you can afford to do so, because he's a good handcuff. He's a good handcuff. He would have a pretty significant role if Chuba Hubbard were to go down, and he's got the all-purpose skill set. He's a talented running back. This is nothing against Jonathan Brooks. It's just Chuba Hubbard is just so damn good, baby. So good, Chuba Hubbard. How about our second trend you need to know heading into Week 13? That's Ramondre Stevenson. What happened? What happened last week to Ramondre Stevenson? His role had been so nice for the previous about month or so. Just full bell cow role. Obviously, it's in a bad offense with a bad offensive line, so the production wasn't fully there, but the role was fantastic. However, last week, there was no reported injury for Ramondre Stevenson, but he played just 42% of the snaps. He was out-snapped by Antonio Gibson, who played 43.5%. Jermichael Hasty got in there for 15.9%. And Antonio Gibson ran 17 routes to Ramondre Stevenson's 14. Now, this could just be a 1-week blip on the radar. Maybe there was a little punishment we didn't know about. Maybe there was an injury that wasn't reported for Ramondre Stevenson. And we're going to get right back to the regular Ramondre Stevenson role in Week 13 and moving forward. Honestly, that's probably kind of what I expect is going to happen. But buyer beware, we just need to understand what happened in Week 12 so we can at least approach Week 13 with some caution, kind of keep an eye on this situation, see what happens. My third trend you need to know is the Buccaneers running back situation has definitely turned and changed a little bit over the last few weeks, specifically in Week 12. Bucky Irving led the backfield in snaps. It was the first time this season that Bucky Irving out-snapped Rachaad White in a game. He played 52.3% of the snaps. Rachaad White played 49% of the snaps. Sean Tucker still got in there for his couple of goal line carries. Hit the why can't I think of the word? Whatever. They got him in there for his 2 touches, his 2 goal line carries. It was so annoying, by the way. 7.7% of the snaps for Sean Tucker. Bucky Irving, he was even out-targeted. He out-targeted Rachaad White 6-1. That was a 20% target share for Bucky Irving. And he ran 19 routes to Rachaad White's 11. Bucky Irving ran a route on nearly 59 or nearly 60% of Baker Mayfield's dropbacks. For those of us who love Rachaad White, this is really concerning. It's looking like it's about to be a Bucky Irving takeover in the Buccaneers backfield. He's playing well. He's got a matchup this week that can really exploit that. So keep an eye on that. Going against the Panthers could be a big Bucky Irving day once again in that backfield. And I don't know how confident I am rolling out Rachaad White at this point. Because one more thing about this. The thing with Rachaad White this whole time was, yes, Bucky Irving was outproducing him on the ground, but at least Rachaad White was getting there as a receiver. He was the receiving back. He was getting the routes. He was getting the targets. He was getting the catches. He was thriving in that role. That's what he does best. That's what he was so good at coming out of Arizona State. But now if Bucky Irving is also taking over that role, we have a bad situation for anyone rostering Rachaad White. I can't start him with confidence at this point. We'll see what happens in week 13. We'll see if this continues in the Bucky Irving direction. If it does, we got to be out on Rachaad White. Number 4 trend you need to know is Jackson Smith and Jigba. Jackson Smith and Jigba is about as hot as any wide receiver in the NFL right now. He's led the Seahawks in targets in 4 straight games. He did it when DK Metcalf was out. And then I think they were like, you know what? This guy's pretty good. This kid's pretty good. So even when DK Metcalf came back after the bye week, they were like, you know what? We got to keep rolling with Jackson Smith and Jigba. This kid he's talented. This is why we drafted him in the first round. Oh, yeah, we drafted him in the first round, and we forgot. Jackson Smith and Jigba was pretty good. 4 straight weeks he's led the team in targets. I expect that's going to continue. He could be a league winner. He could really be a league winner. Down the stretch, he could have some big weeks. He could have some big weeks in the fantasy playoffs. I'm feeling really, really good for my teams that have Jackson Smith and Jigba on them. And then my 5th and final trend you need to know heading into week 13 is Jauan Jennings, also trending towards being a league winner. Even with Brandon Allen at quarterback, Jauan Jennings continued to lead the 49ers in targets. He's done this in every game since he's returned from his hip injury, in every game that he's been healthy since Brandon Ayuk has been out with his ACL injury. So Jauan Jennings looking like a top 20, maybe a top 15, could even get into the top 12 wide receivers rest of season. If Brock Purdy is healthy rest of the way, we got Brock Purdy out on the field. Jauan Jennings is going to be really good down the stretch. He's going to be really, really good. He's going to outproduce Tebow the rest of the year. I promise you that. No matter who's out there at quarterback. So wheels up for Jauan Jennings. He's a must-start at this point. Keep him rolling, especially this week. We'll see about the weather situation. Weather aside, I really love the matchup against the Bills. Could be a lot of points scored in that game. Unfortunately, there's also going to be a lot of snow in that game, which could bring that production down. We'll see. We'll see the weather reports over the next 24 hours. See how that plays out. And then before I get to your questions, I always like to finish these shows with an underdog play. And I got one for you this week. We've been smashing these things every single week last week. I gave you Anthony Richardson over 41.5 rushing yards last week. He smashed that. He was almost there in the first quarter. So that was a great call. This week, I'm going to give you Taysom Hill higher than 24.5 receiving yards against the Rams. That's right. Taysom freaking Hill higher than 24.5 receiving yards. He had 10 targets in week 11 before the bye week. He caught 8 of them for 50 yards. Week before that, he had 36 receiving yards. And in week 9, he had 41 receiving yards. So it's been 3 straight weeks that Taysom Hill had smashed the over on this line, 24.5 receiving yards. The Rams defense are very susceptible. 2 pass catchers, 2 tight ends. They're using Taysom Hill in a variety of different ways. And Darren Rizzi just absolutely loves him some Taysom Hill. We thought Sean Payton loved him some Taysom Hill. We thought Dennis Allen loved him some Taysom Hill even more than Sean Payton. Well, guess who loves Taysom Hill even more than both of those guys combined? That is Darren Rizzi. He's calling the shots. He's been talking about wanting to get the ball to Taysom Hill even more. We're here for it. Smash higher than 24.5 receiving yards for Taysom Hill. He's going to be heavily involved in this offense. They don't have anybody catch the football. MVS. If you get MVS, you're going to give the ball to Taysom Hill. And make sure, if you're signing up on Underdog and you're playing for the first time, make sure you use promo code YARDSPER. They're going to give you a free pick, plus they're going to give you a beautiful deposit offer of up to $1,000. So make sure you're using promo code YARDSPER, all one word, on Underdog. They're going to hook you up. All right. So we got a few extra minutes here. I do have another show starting in about an hour, about 9:10, 9:15, right here on the Yards for Fantasy YouTube channel. We're going to talk sleepers and streamers for week 13. Before we get to that, I would like to just grab a few of your questions here since we got a few extra minutes. Make sure you're subscribed, like the channel, like the video to make sure you don't miss that next show. We got a really good one for you coming up. All right, let's grab this one. Should we start Cooper Kupp or Kyren Williams? I think, man, I think they're both really good plays this week. I really do. As much as I don't love Kyren Williams, seems a little touchdown dependent, but he seems to score every week. He really does. He seems to score just about every week. But maybe it's my biases a little bit against Kyren Williams. I think I'm going to go with Cooper Kupp there. How about AJ to the moon? I believe this was in reference to AJ Brown when we were talking about Ravens, Eagles, fantasy points party. We're going to get a ton of fantasy points in that game. So if Devonta Smith is out, AJ Brown to the moon. You know what? Even if Devonta Smith plays, AJ Brown to the friggin' moon. Dude's a beast. Dude's an animal. When he's healthy, he's one of the top receivers in this league. No doubt about it. How about from KJ? KJ's asking, better full PPR flex play, Garrett Wilson or Jawan Jennings? I think it's Jawan Jennings. I really do. I believe it's Jawan Jennings. He's the number one target in that offense at this point. You could argue it's George Kittle, but at least among the wide receivers, it's Jawan Jennings. He's getting peppered with targets pretty consistently over the last several weeks. I like his quarterback better. I like his offense better. Now, the one caveat here is the weather. If that Bills game, we got to monitor that weather in that game over the next 12 hours. If that Bills game is sounding like it's going to be a winter freaking wonderland, there's going to be snow and wind in particular, then I think we just got to go Garrett Wilson. He's a much safer play in that situation. Weather aside, it's Jawan Jennings, but keep an eye on that weather. I haven't fully dived in to the weather report on that game. So that aside, it's Jawan Jennings, but with the weather, we probably got to go Garrett Wilson. Another one from KJ. Better tight end start. Taysom Hill or Cade Otton? Woo! So we saw Cade Otton just absolutely tearing it up with both Mike Evans and Chris Godwin out. He was dominant. And you know, I really thought that would probably continue even with Mike Evans returning last week. And it didn't. I believe Cade Otton had one catch for like 30 yards or something like that. That was his line. It wasn't great. It really wasn't great. But could that just be a one-off? It could be an indication that maybe Mike Evans being back, you know, we're not going to get as much Cade Otton. I think either way, maybe Cade Otton isn't quite as dominant, isn't quite as consistent as he had been over the last 3 or 4 weeks when both of those guys were out. I do think we can still trust Cade Otton as a mid-range tight end one. I'm looking at my rankings right now. I have Cade Otton ranked as my tight end 9 and Taysom Hill as my tight end 10. So I guess we're leaning Cade Otton. But at this point, they're both top 10 tight ends for me this week. You could flip a coin. If it's me, I'm probably going to start the more traditional tight end, Cade Otton, but we saw what Taysom Hill did prior to the bye week. We just talked about Taysom Hill. If you can find a way to get him in your lineup, I'd do it. He's definitely the more fun play. He's the more volatile for sure. I would have a hard time sitting Taysom Hill. I really, really would. But my rankings, they're telling me slight edge to Kate on him. But that is our show. That is our show. And like I said, in less than an hour, I'm going to be back right here on the Yards Per Fantasy YouTube channel, where you're going to talk sleepers and streamers for week 13. It was tough. This was a tough week to come up with sleepers and streamers because a quarter of the league is already played. They've already played their games between Thanksgiving and Black Friday. 8 of the 32 teams already in the books. So it was hard to find 6 sleepers among the remaining teams, but we did it. Sam and I, we have 6 sleepers plus our bold predictions. Don't you dare miss that show coming up at about 9:15 Eastern time right here on the Yards Per Fantasy YouTube channel.